name is Elisa Udaskin, and I am a career specialist in career services at JVS, Jewish Vocational Service located in East Orange and Montclair, New Jersey. So as I always start our webinars, I tell you a little bit about JVS. Jewish Vocational Service was founded in 1939, and our motto at JVS has always been helping people help themselves, which means we help people get jobs and get back on their feet. Our JobSeekers programs, this is what this is, these webinars, are fully funded by Jewish Federation of Greater MetroWest and by Project M, and we thank them both so much for their support. So this morning, we have a treat for you. I'm very excited to welcome our guest speaker, Ruth Robbins. Ruth has spoken with us previously, and back by popular demand, we're going to be talking about references and everything to know about references. Ruth is an experienced career coach and group facilitator affiliated with two outplacement companies, Physicians Inc. and the White Hawk Group, and her own 20+ year private practice, where she coaches and empowers individuals to make transformative career changes and navigate successful job transitions. I'm delighted to welcome you, Ruth, and we are going to have a terrific conversation. So over to you.
Okay, welcome everybody on this rather balmy day, those of you from the north. East here, all in air conditioning, I hope. Welcome and thank you for coming in. Can everybody see this PowerPoint? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so managing your references to land your next gig. I say gig, it could be job, but these days it could be multiple things. So getting you back into the workforce, if you already are there and you're looking for something a little different, this works too. Now, reference is not particularly a sexy, exciting topic, like, how to use your LinkedIn resources, but it is so necessary. So let's move forward. And Alyssa and I are going to kind of share some chats together, not formal chats, but, she will, Alyssa having employed many, many people, has gone through this process on both ends. So we're excited to have your input. Your resume and LinkedIn profile are only as strong as the reputation and the quality of the people who can vouch for your performance and your experience. I think that says it pretty much in a nutshell. Reference checking is here to stay. It's taken on a little bit of a different complexion, I think, with outside reference checkers, online close-ended, digital forms to fill out. In some ways, it expedites the hiring team's ability to check up on you. But on the other hand, there's always somebody who's going to want to find out about a candidate by phone, perhaps first by email, and it can be a combination of the above, all of it. It's a time-consuming process for those of you who have actually done some hiring, as you know. And the stakes these days, always, but more so these days, if the wrong candidate is onboarded, everybody gets to hear about it. It's from the point of view of the hiring company or organization. It's really very vital they get it right. Usually, not always, as I say over here, the reference checking, let's get that here. The reference checking stage comes kind of toward the very end when the most promising candidate, usually a couple of candidates, have been narrowed down and identified. Because for the most part, to get anything valuable from a resource, from a reference, it takes some time and it takes some commitment. And that's really an important piece of it. So it makes sense for both parties, the hiring team and the candidate, to kind of make sure that process, as best as you can, is honored. And Alyssa, I think you're going to have something to say, but let's get. Okay, here we go. A lot of times people, get their resume done, or they, of course, their LinkedIn profile, all their branding materials, their cover letter. That's great. But as I said, it's only as good as the people who can vouch for the claims that you make in your resume. So begin to build a list of who might serve as a reference from the moment you hear that perhaps your company might be downsizing, or if you get wind that performance in your current job might be in jeopardy, that your performance, I mean, I've come across so many people for years have had stellar reviews, and then through management reshuffling, somebody comes on that doesn't like you all that much, and all of a sudden the PIP is written up. That's the time for you to say, I better look at the outside. So be ready to build and subsequently refresh your list. Get more people than you think you need. If you can do that, double check whereabouts of your contacts, obviously through LinkedIn, a Google search, and there are other resources. I can get that for you. If anybody wants to contact me later, I can get something for you. But basically, you should be pretty good with LinkedIn, Google search. And even with LinkedIn, if you know somebody who knows somebody, then quickly see how, if they can ping you into somebody to that key reference. Okay. Build your list. In fact, you should have it in your back pocket. And that's ideal. We will talk about the non-ideal later, but now who do you select? The right people in light of the position or positions you're going for. You might want a couple of lists. I'm working with a client right now. She is sort of a newly fledged project manager, but she's had many as a senior paralegal. So she might need a couple of lists, not a lot, but maybe two from a prior supervisor, just to move one search forward, and another one to move another search forward. A prior supervisor, manager, a direct report, a boss's boss. Now, it's not just one, but it could be kind of a little bit of a smorgasbord. That's ideal. Maybe a customer or a client. If you've been in your own practice, you've been consulting, or a senior peer. This works if you are on a kind of senior team where you're kind of interacting with a whole group of people. That could be, it's not the only thing, but it's a nice resource to have. Okay. This is up for debate, but when I looked on the internet, they said ideally select 3 to 5 reliable and high integrity individuals who can vouch for your performance. Must it be stellar? It could be excellent, it could be really good, but your performance that can hold up potentially to the following question, which is going to be posed by a hiring company or an HR or individual or a checker. What challenges or weaknesses does this person have we should be aware of? They would be foolish if they didn't ask that. So that is hard to manage, but, and we could talk about that later. But what you want to do is kind of cultivate that relationship with the people you have on your list, so that you're really continuing to be seen in the most positive light that they could throw back to the hiring team.
Yeah. So Ruth, I wanted to to just jump in about that piece of
Yeah,
it.
please.
So this seems daunting, right? You know, how are you going to pick 3 to 5 people who could
Isn't
actually
it?
see what your weaknesses are and things like this? But what I want to suggest to everyone is that when you're thinking about references who you worked for and you think about your role in that company, you have had reviews, right? You have had biannual, annual reviews. And in every single review, there's what have you excelled at and what do you need to work on and to work on to get better or to course correct or whatever it is. So, what I would encourage you to do is think back to those reviews and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing and a knock about a weakness or a challenge, because in the review process, when you're working for a company, this is always what we do. We work on and try to identify things that somebody can improve upon. So when you're thinking about the references, think about the position that that person had vis-a-vis you and that you're choosing, and how did you perform? What were the challenges that were brought up to you by whether it was 360-degree feedback or from your manager? And if you're comfortable with those, you're like, yeah, you know what? I definitely need to work on that. You know, be self-aware. Then you're like, tick, I want to pick that person. But it is just having a little bit of self-awareness as you're thinking about this as well, and thinking back to what you exceeded at and what your managers told you to work on. So
Super, super point. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great. And there will be okay, really important. As soon as you can, reach out and orient your contacts. Here's some verbiage you could and may use. Here is where you have to be careful how you pose this. I'm hoping that you would do me the honor of serving as a reference in my job search. Okay, honor sounds like we're Victorian, but if you would say a positive reference, yeah, reference is positive. What I want to encourage you guys to push that a little bit to make sure that this person really is in your corner. If there's any feeling, then be self-aware. Here's another one. Maybe you like it more. Would you be comfortable serving as an enthusiastic reference for me? I'm pushing these adjectives because I want to make sure that they will go, oh, that it's not, yeah, I'll do a reference, that they're really aware that you want them in a nice way to really look out for you. Important, and I bolded this, I'm looking at positions in the X industry and in a Y role. Let them know either through your email or preferably then following up with a conversation, however you do that, about, orient them as to what you're looking for. And guess what? This person or a couple of these people could be a great networking source anyway. So you're doing a lot of the things you would be doing in reaching out to a network of people who might have their ear to the ground for you for other reasons. So here are 2 ways. Third thing, I know your schedule is tight, or I know your schedule is tight. So how can I make it easier for you? Would it help if I send a few notes to you? The timing on that is important, but it's so helpful to make it easier for them. That's why I think this is an aside, but that's why I think the conversational piece of the reference process, somewhere it's not going to be countermanded by AI or something like that, because people don't like to fill out forms like that, but they like to expound on what a great person you were. It's nice for them. It's good. So one way or another, Alyssa, do you agree? I think one way or the other, they're somehow going to have a conversation with somebody.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
so what I would say is that from my experience, I get asked. So I used to have a different career. I was a global marketing director for 20 years. And so I established like, a pretty wide network when I was at Kraft and Mondelez with people who worked for me, peers, cross-functional team members, agencies, all that. And so it goes without saying that I've been asked many, many times over the years to provide references. And as somebody who's being asked to provide a reference, I really want to do the best I can for that person who's asking me. And I've had people who've asked me who I haven't spoken to in 5 years. I've had, 10 years. And really, I think of them fondly. So the first thing is that I usually, I knew them. So it's not just like they were extended on the team, like I knew them. But I want to do my best for them. So what I always ask people to do is to send me the link to the job posting that they've like the original job posting they applied for, so I could be familiar with what the role is that they're being offered the job for, they need the reference for, and ask them to send me the cover letter and the resume that they sent in for the application. So it's not a lot. Basically, I'm pretty good at like scanning things in like 5 minutes. So I just, as the person who's been asked to give the reference, I want to do my best job to present them. So I just ask them, send me so I can just scan what you put in. And then I ask them to just send me 1 or 2 lines on what the areas that the projects or something that we had worked on together. Or because I can't remember if it was like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, exactly what we worked on. And it doesn't really take the person who's asking for the reference long to just send me this. It literally takes me 5 to 10 minutes to scan it, to refresh my memory so that I can best represent the person who's asking me to be a candidate. So, and then I looked for a job a couple times myself, and I do the same thing. I feed the person who I've asked for a reference. I send them, this is the resume, this is the cover letter, this is maybe not the cover letter, but this is the resume. Yeah, the cover letter, because it highlights a couple of the things that I want the company to know me for.
Okay. I would feel really great if you were a reference. That's an incredible job, you know. Many of my clients, they don't quite get that from I think that's fabulous. And when we say the honor of, you're giving them the honor of really caring about them. That's what you really want to kind of ping in. There might be people that you might ask and you hear something that says, I don't think so. But my goodness, Alyssa, very, very nice.
Well, my approach is always for everything is you want to do unto others as you're hoping that they do to you, right? And so we want to model it. So for everybody here, and is that, while you're in job search right now and people you're going to be asking people for references, don't stop as you're networking and trying to get that next opportunity. If someone asks you to be a reference, just think it through, how do you want other people to do you, and then you do it for them. And that's it.
Because anyway, great comment. Managing your reference means helping them to help you, staying in touch through the process, just an email, just not even that, because they can get flushed out, but maybe through LinkedIn, things are going well, or going through challenging time, but this too will pass. Letting your references know, very important. Obviously, I think you all know this, when they can be expecting a call by the hiring team, and that should be under your auspices, your control. There should be no surprises for them, and it is your job to ensure that.
May I interject here again?
Yeah, sure.
Because Ruth, when I've told you I've been asked to be a reference for many people, and I don't know.
And to your credit, by the way, I would like to say, not every, it's a good reflection. I don't know about
any of you guys, but I do not answer the phone anymore if I don't recognize the number. Okay, so I just don't, because there's just so much spam. So I like to know if when the person is tells me that it's it's very close. They begin given the job offer. It's just pending the references. They tell me, and I say to them, okay, if you have any idea what's what area code or state is coming through or whatever. But if they don't know, that's fine too. I just know that in the next couple days, 3 days or whatever, because it's pretty quick after they're given the offer that they call the references. I know to at least look at the phone number. If it's not a 1-800 number, I'm going to answer it, or to check my voicemails very regularly to make sure that I haven't missed out on this. Now, on the other hand, just last year, I got called for a reference and the person didn't even tell me. So guess
Bad,
how I
bad.
felt?
Just no.
Well, not how I felt, because it wasn't about me. It was about how am I going to do the best job to give a reference when I didn't even know this was coming.
Yeah,
Okay. So even though this was someone who had been in touch with me throughout the past year, okay, which it's not like it came out of the blue and it was like a stranger. I knew they were searching for a job. They'd asked me previously to be a reference. All totally cool. Okay. However, they didn't tell me that they got a job offer and they put me down for a reference that was going to come within the next couple of days. So it
yeah.
only serves you to to help with all of that, because again, the person you're asking for reference, if you remember anything, is that they want to help you land that job. Okay.
Okay, that's ideal. That's what you want them to feel. Now, another thing is don't just drop it. Apprise them of the outcomes of their efforts. Sometimes you're not the last candidate. They are now going to go through the labor of saying, let's figure out what between one and two, because it's labor intensive. It's between one person and the other. It's between Ruth and Alyssa. They're both great. So now it's a little more competitive, and now it has to, but if you're not chosen, you still should. You still should let them know the the efforts, the outcome of their efforts. Please, a sincere note of thanks, whether you land or not. And this is the situation where, it often could be between two people, and they want to put person A, they want to offer something to person A, but if person A is not wanting to maybe get on board, or they're thinking 4 or 5 days, they may then want to offer it to person B, and they really want to know who their people are, their future. So their
So
project. Yeah.
Ruth, I've experienced this myself being on when I was applying for a job. I got to the last, many of us here have got to the last final round, and it was between two candidates, and I didn't get
Yeah.
the job. And I still feel yucky that I didn't go back to my references again to let them know I didn't get the job, because then it made me feel uncomfortable to go back to the well to ask them for the next opportunity I had.
Yeah, that's
And
why
I
you
did
need a
do it.
slightly bigger list. And
Yeah.
these are
Or
not easy things. We're not traveling in the land of black and white, like but it's like very nuanced. And we could do that discussion. Uh, Often is not like the last imprimatur, the last, I want to offer you the job. We're just going to check your references. That's great. But sometimes, like we say, it's between a couple of candidates. If it's three, that would surprise me. Um, if I could. And when you do land, gift cards, coffee dates, when you do, surprise and delight, and stay in touch with your references. I was working with a client, and I'm telling you, it took her a year to get the most phenomenal job. And I didn't want her to turn it down, but she got a job as an assistant, big time, to a minister of a church. I said, take it. No, the salary, the compensation was not what she wanted. Bless her. She waited. She worked on that for 6, 7 more months. When she landed, it was like amazing, the letters that she sent everybody who helped her, and still stays in touch. through LinkedIn. It's like she has an entourage of people who really care about her and she cares about them. Surprise and delight. Make it easy for people to recommend you. Moving ahead. Some sidebars. Hiring company will connect to the candidate's prior human resource department, to verify stuff about, how that person worked. They want to dig a little bit. In many states, I know New York State, and I don't know about New Jersey, the policy across the board is to allow companies to the recommending company only to give out basic information. Why? To avoid defamation lawsuits that have been roiling in the job place. That can be helpful. Here are the facts. And well, that's all I can tell you, folks, and if they love you enough, that might be enough. But job title, dates of employment, perhaps one other neutral fact, was this person a consultant? Was this person on staff? Just very, very little. You could be Simon Legree or you could be Maria Teresa. You treated the same way. That conceivably can be a good thing, especially if there's a ragged history or there, what we've talked about before is pretty ideal when, but it isn't always easy or ideal. So that could be helpful. Even so, a hiring team, hiring manager will want to hear something directly from the horse's mouth, as we say. So treat that horse real well. Okay, here we go. Many companies use outside reference checking services, Checkster, Harvard, there are many of them. Some of them interface with fraud detection or they're checking out my history. But sometimes, as we said before, it makes the whole process consistent, doable, timely, and efficient for the hiring party. But I don't know. I've had people ask me for references too. Sometimes if they're an assistant to me for a short period of time, I don't want to be doing that. I just don't want to. It doesn't allow, I don't know how they can get people to on board with that. But once again, you as the job seeker can help that person. But I know I can hear, if I may speak for you, Alyssa, that you much rather be able to kind of really let it out who the person is in some kind of conversation, or at least a full email about the individual. Try not to give out your references too soon. You don't want to, I think we've touched on this, but once again, you don't want to squander and overuse their valuable time and attention, especially in this when you barely know what a job opportunity is about. Now, we've been talking about when you've gone through maybe 2 to 3 rounds and they really like you. You're either one of a very few or they've already given you the offer. That's a very different thing than an application which says we require 2 references. And that puts you in a very unfair position. And there are things you might be able to do about it. And Alyssa will take care of that. She'll speak about it. It would behoove you to make sure you're in the running as the candidate as much as you can before you be asked to provide either a reference list or 1 or 2 references. So that's a piece of the management process that it requires a navigation, and the waters are not always so calm. So where am I? Can you tell us a little bit, Alyssa, about your experience when you were asked to give out your references too soon? Your verbiage in that was like terrific, okay?
I hope I remember it. Okay, so as Ruth was saying, it takes a lot of time for the company to go and do the reference checks, right? It takes a lot of time. So typically they're only going to ask for references for the top candidates for the role as they've gone through the processes, right? So they're not going to ask for them or call the references before. Now, sometimes what happens is when you're doing the application, they ask you to put down your references and you haven't even had an interview yet. That most likely they're not going to call them until the end, but they ask you, and that's really uncomfortable. So I've had an example where I was asked to put my references contact information and their name. And it was just before I started the interview, the first interview. And I said I was very uncomfortable with that because I would want to give my references a heads up that they would be getting a call, and also to find out if they were available. Maybe they were out of the country, they were wherever they were. And so the potential employer made a note of it and said, we promise we will not call your references until we give you, we let you know ahead of time. And so I think that is very reasonable. If they ask for your references, the first thing I did was say, I'd rather not give them until we get further along the process and we see if we're a fit with one another, or if they really push, then say, then please let me know before you do reach out to them. So I know that that's a question that a lot of people asked in the chat. So I'm glad we addressed that one.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't go further with the application process unless you put someone down. So I've coached somebody to say, don't necessarily put the best, put one and say to be provided later. If you get the ear of someone, well, luckily you did, because an application process is a big wall. I sometimes might say, I respect your process and I also respect my references. Could we put this off a little bit until I understand more what the job is about, whether we're a mutual good fit? I think you'll get more out of them. Guys, if you can put that in your head, that's good. All right.
And we both, so Ruth and I just gave different verbiage of how to do it. And, the thing that's going to happen is you're going to say, if I don't give the name, I don't even have a chance here. No, that's not true. You're actually showing them part of your personality that's respectful. Okay. And it's, you start interviewing from the first moment you're interacting with someone, even though it's not that formal part of the interview, Go ahead. So Ruth, are we at the end of the slide? Okay.
We are at the end of the slides, but we also have other topics we're going to share. Okay, I had the outline there.
And then for everybody here, so for everyone on the call, so I just want you to know that Hannah has been writing down the questions, and which is nice. A lot of them questions in the chat are ones that Ruth and I had anticipated. So we're going to go through those first, and then Hannah is going to identify the next questions. So I see someone's hand is up. I prefer if you please, so instead of having your hand up, write your question out in the chat, please. Okay. Thank you. And we're tracking everything. So Ruth, do you want to, I don't know if you want to.
There's one more thing I want to say to everyone about that topic, which is if it's look, some of you might be in IT and everything is mechanized and everything. But other than that, I so agree that you really should, if it's a company where you cannot get the ear of somebody somehow, an ear or an email or something, then do you really want to work for that company? If they're that, like they've been pinched somehow too, in terms of we need 2 references no matter what before you even darken our door or lighten our door. So keep that in mind. And Alyssa, they did not contact you until when they hired you. So there you go. Right, I think. So there you go. Not only did she just push up a little bit, she actually got the job. Okay. The next thing, if you haven't been in touch with references for a while or years, how do you start? Well, first thing, they may that particular individual who will be giving you glowing reviews. They're not current. So just that in itself is like, well, we definitely want them, but we want to sort of curate that. So there are letters, there are ways to really, really use your emotional intelligence and reach out to people. And I think, Alyssa, you explained that very well. Track people down, use your network, use your LinkedIn network, use the groups you use. And then how would you, Alyssa, approach somebody that you haven't worked for, but you were terrific together and you want this person to speak on your behalf?
Right. So I'll tell you from both perspectives. From the perspective of when people reach out to me, and I haven't spoken to them in many years, which is going to be, it's just normal, guys. Like you haven't kept in touch with all the people, you know. Someone will reach out to me, whether they had my email or my phone number from when we were working together, or on LinkedIn. And I usually, I mean, if somebody's going to be reaching out to me for a reference, they've already done that due diligence check that Ruth talked about, which is, did I have a good experience with Elisa? I think Elisa is going to be a good person to give a reference for me? So that's step one. So they've done that in their head. So they've reached out to me. I may have I'm from Toronto. I've lived in Singapore. I've worked all over the place. It may have been when I was at Craft Canada. And the minute I see their name, I'm like, wow, I remember, I really like that. Like, I remember working with them. And they'll say, hi, it's been a while. I like, this is actually a good one. Hi, Elisa, it's been a while. I love seeing your posts on LinkedIn, or if we're friends on Facebook too. I love seeing the pictures of your family or da 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 through the years. Because remember, often we're in touch. We're either LinkedIn with them or they're Facebook with them or something. And I just want, I'm in between jobs now, and I would really love and appreciate a favor from you if you could be a reference for me. Now, on the other side, when I've done that, it's the same thing. I always start off with whether it's a message on LinkedIn or whether I had their phone number or, Facebook. And I start by saying and acknowledging it's been a long time since we've been in touch. And I love seeing what you're up to from the posts that you make, or how is your family doing if I remember they had a family, or how are you doing just in general. I'm in between. I'm looking for references for a job that as I'm in job search, and I would really appreciate if you could be one of my references. And then I would say, would you like to set up a few minutes, 10 minutes to catch up? I'd love to hear more about you as well. So what I try to do and what I'm receptive to is when it's not just, can you do this for me? But they want to touch base with me. When somebody wants to touch base with me after a long time and ask me for something, that goes over a lot better. And every single time that if I reach out to someone, I always say at the end, I learn more about what they're doing to catch up. And I almost always can think of something of someone to connect them with or something to help them with as well in that call. And I follow up with it. And
As we
in the
said,
same
yep.
way, people, when they've asked me, when they haven't reached out to me in a long time, and then they say, what can I do for you? And I'll say, well, you know what? At the point when I was, I'd written this book and I said, I would love for you to just tell people about my book, or I would love to, whatever. And they followed up. And so that's the way to get into it. You just have to, like, what's it called? Rip off the Band-Aid, reach out to the person and just say, it's been a long time, acknowledge it. And, how you doing?
Beautiful. Same techniques you would use when we coach around networking. And it really overlaps a lot because you might
Yeah.
reach out to somebody and, yeah, a good thing. It has been a while and I am, and would you be comfortable, because there is a comfort about serving as a reference for me. I so enjoyed our work together. Do we extol with excited? What did Shakespeare say? You're damning with faint praise. You're going to do the opposite. You're going to lay it on a little bit because you're asking, you know, you're asking for a favor from people. And it's their pleasure and should be mostly. So I think we've made that clear. I have a next point. How to, and I'm using the word curate a lot. Your best references, your most timely, or, you know, how do you to make sure that the busy recruiter hiring manager gets to them and not to anything that could be a little wonky. You're a little, you know, using timing, availability to get your strongest champion front and center for the hiring team. Now, I know that's on people's mind. Everything we've said so far is the ideal thing, but things happen in the corporate world. Management gets taken over, and all of a sudden, you've got somebody on top of your head who doesn't want you there, who doesn't like you all that much, and kind of so that, and maybe you've been there 2 years and not great, you know. How do you finesse? That's the rub.
Yeah.
That's the rub. How do you language that with the person? And since I only represent the job seeker, no matter what level, we sometimes finesse that. We like, here is my, and here is a different point. Like, you want to be respectful to the company because you know this is an important process, but you also want to be, you want the job and you're good for the job. So you could say, look, here is my list. This person, you may not get them in that much. So I would say the one you're going to probably be able to reach is, and you put the very best person in there that you can think. Because if you have a wonky kind of meaning, you know, they'll say something, but they would damn by faint praise. You don't want that. So, you know, when you work with a coach, we do come up with how to finesse that list. You want a very rich list, 5 people, 3 people, all at different levels. Ultimately, somebody is going to want to find out how you work with your direct supervisor, you know, your direct report. So that's one piece of it. They're not going to, you know, especially if they're interviewing for 2, they're checking references for a couple of candidates now. How much time do they have? They don't have all that much time. So they're going to go to HR, and HR will say, yes, they worked there for 3 years in good standing. Yes, they worked. The person being, yes, they worked there for 5 years in good standing. You haven't learned very much. But when they come to talk to somebody, finesse it so that I've done that. I've helped people with that. You know, that person, you might get them in, but you have to get the person who's most available to be your best reference. Not so easily done. Alyssa and I, when we spoke about this webinar project, we said, you know, there are no black and whites. There are no easy answers. But we want to get it out there, look at it, give you some hints, give you some ways to do it.
Yeah.
Another way, Alyssa, pipe in, you know, I mean, I'm really looking at it a little differently, not so much from the hiring team, where I mean, almost all the data you see is from the hiring manager. How to check references, how to weed through the garbage, how to, you know, but there's not that much for candidates themselves. Like, I know I'm good for this job. How do I get it? How do I jump over that? Okay. Another thing, Alyssa, maybe you actually have a conversation with the important hiring manager, and you could say, well, I'll say it. You could say, look, I have a great list here. I have you, you know, the person I just worked with, management change, the usual stuff, you know. And we had very different styles of operating. And yes, you could call that person, but I really think you'll find that you'll get more out of this person and possibly that person. If you've had a
So
bad last reaction or a relationship, that has to be managed. Yes, Alyssa.
yeah, and I would just say that my recommendation is do as much as you can to avoid putting that person on your reference list, right? This all goes back to, and we've had questions coming up in the chat, how to determine that someone will provide a positive reference, things like this. It's about being, self-awareness. Do you feel that did you have any conflicts? Like, just so you didn't see eye to eye on some business things that you did together or something, that's why you need to have a longer list, right? That you choose from, and to avoid people who you think, you didn't necessarily get along with. I've had examples of clients who are recently not working. They did not get along with their manager at all. However, they were with the company for years and years and years, and got along really well and performed really well with previous managers. So I recommended to this individual, you would never want to have the most recent one. Sometimes you just don't jive with someone, right? You just have to go back, okay? And choose the people who whether they, because they've given you reviews, because you've worked well together on a project. You have to kind of go with, your self-awareness and your gut about who to pick. Um, we also have questions about okay, this is a good one, Ruth, that we talked about. Two different ones here. Should references all be professional? Are personal references okay?
I feel that let's not waste anybody's time. Professional references, and I gave a list of, and you'll see that, of the levels they could come from. Okay. Um, yeah, if it's really more, it's less than tertiary to me. You really
Yeah.
have to work on that.
Now, here's the thing though. So I would rephrase that question. Should references always be professional? Are personal references okay? So I'm going to give you a bonus answer here. Okay. Professional, if we extend professional to be volunteer and community work,
Oh, well, yeah.
I know, Ruth, but that's the way the question was cast. So I'm just
Oh,
expanding what the new answer is. And that's why
I take this so seriously. Yeah.
Ruth as a coach, is always telling people on your resume, especially when you're seeking, you want to volunteer, you want to do community work. First of all, for at least my opinion, is for up here to keep yourself busy, but also to show that in a break, that you are doing something for your community, you're doing something positive, using some skills. So definitely, if you're on a volunteer board, even if
Oh,
you're volunteering for the school and you're making lunches every day, then get the supervisor be a reference about your commitment, your punctuality, your empathy. There are
yes.
so many things.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Ruth?
Absolutely. But I kind of think of those as professional because the reason you volunteer is to put yourself in a quasi professional way. And that's one of the things, a valuable thing that you get out of strategic volunteering is a good reference. And I always ask that my people find to put themselves in roles that are as professional as possible. So we're answering the same question, but not
Yeah,
your best aunt or your minister, unless you're actually doing the work. Let's say you're a community organizer, then by all means, the minister or anybody who, so, but I look at those as work related, however you
exactly.
define work. And that could
Yeah.
be
And
good.
so I do want to address a cohort of people who may have taken time off from the workforce to be a caregiver, raise your kids, care for aging parents. Perhaps you had a break yourself for personal reasons, and it's been 15 years, 20 years. And this happens, and this is totally legit. This is life, okay? And so, what do you do if you haven't been in and Ruth, this is where I'm going to distinguish for those people who have this question. If you haven't worked for a company getting a paycheck in 15 to 20 years.
I
And
see.
that's what because I do have clients where we're in that situation. And that's where I would say that number one, they know when you're going through this interview process that you have this gap that you weren't in the paid workforce. So they know that. So if you have someone from back before the last time you were there, that's great if you could get a couple of them. But let's say it's too hard. People have moved away. You just can't reach out. That's when you want to be able to touch base with these other, not necessarily paid work you did, but leadership positions, volunteer positions, and those are references. And so just like Ruth has shared with us that you want to curate and nurture your relationships with people you want to be references who you worked with, you want to do the same thing with, actually one of the things that I did is in between my global marketing, blah, blah, blah career. And doing this, I did a whole bunch of different things for 6 years. And primarily because I wanted to be at home when my kids were in high school because I was never around. So I wanted to be there and stuff. And so one of the things that I'm the most proud of, I don't know if I'd ever want to do it again, but I led the entire ice hockey banquet. Had multiple committees, the whole thing. It was a big, big job. Anyhow, just wanted to say. So, that was a lot of work, guys. And I didn't get paid for it, but it's definitely something that showed me, was able to demonstrate my patience, my organizational skills, my patience, lots of things. So, just.
But if anything, it's supplementary to what you really want, front and center. That's somebody wrote here, most references will not speak to qualitative questions. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. That doesn't help you, actually. It doesn't help the candidate. It behooves you to make sure you've got somebody that will speak well for you. And if it is HR, yeah, they will not respond in most states, not everywhere, but because they've been burned. But in some ways, it actually could help if they really love you and you've knocked their socks off, then it's okay. We'll go with that. But it almost behooves you to have somebody, at least one solid work person that could say, a valid voice that says, let me tell you about this person. Because it kind of goes in your record. It's like they come prepared with that much more ammunition to love you and be happy that they chose the right person. And
Yeah.
then time will tell. Another thing that could happen is, I don't know how many of you are currently working, and maybe some of you are, but they're not going to go to your very current employer now. But when you're perhaps on board, they will continue to check. So just be aware of that. They might, just to make sure that everything lines up.
Great. So Ruth, there was a question on this. So I'll just tell you, what if because you're talking about this, what if you're still employed but looking? How do you handle that?
I know, I get that. Happens all the time. No, everybody realizes they're not going to jeopardize. No one is going to jeopardize your employment right now. Whoa, no. But they will go to the former, they'll go to what you give them. They will be curious about the company you worked for prior, and that they will go to because that's safe. What I'm saying is sometimes once you're on board and you've given notice and your 2 weeks and whatever, they've onboarded you. They're still in a process, can be in a process to making sure that your resume checks out. At that point, they can go to HR, whatever, and might. But Jen, I have not heard too many war stories, but you hear it in the news all the time, right? They voted for, they brought on board, and then it doesn't check out. But I don't think we need to go too much into that. That's a little Anything else that's on there?
Yeah, we have a question
Yeah.
from Stephen about a reference from all previous positions if career spans 40 years. Stephen, did you want to just ask your question? I just I can get a little bit so Ruth and I can get a little bit more clarity.
Go.
So I have a 40-year career. I've had maybe 4 jobs for 4, 5, 10 years. The last experiences have been layoff after a year and a half. They weren't the best jobs, but I took them to be working, and I'm not clear. So the job I had for 5 years was in 2002. The job I had for 10 years was in 2006. And I'm not clear, like, how far back should I have a reference for
Yeah.
every job I've ever had? Or, and the chairman I reported to in one position is now the vice chair at another institution. And I keep in touch with him. So I've been using him on a list, but I'm just curious, given this presentation, how I should handle the list given a 40-year career.
I'll start. Okay. It is really depends on the targets you are going after. Truly, what do you see as your next position? And how do you have to curate and frame who you are? If you're working at a slightly lower level or a more consulting type level where 2 years here, 2 years there, then I would begin to think about the network of people who are more current, because if it goes that far, we know we're in an ageist. Yeah, this is not easy stuff. You might want to have a little of both, and you might want to frame it as such. Here are, I have 2 references from what I do currently, and they should know that as I've told you, I love this work. I love, the in, the outs of it. I jump right in. I know the technology. So this will be good for this. If you want to know about my management experience and that I have, if that's interesting, let's also get that on the list. And that has been early. It's how you present and package yourself and where you think you can go next that will help you frame that reference. So you might want a little of both.
Okay, thank you.
I do have more questions, Ruth, but did you want to talk about anything else before I get to the next questions?
This is a hard one. I'm just going to throw it out there. If you suspect someone might be inadvertently, in Wall Street, they used to call it blackballing. And I had a wonderful senior colleague. And he wrote a book and Wall Street is its own. I'm a New Yorker, so it's its own world. The first chapter was on managing your references and managing your exit statement and managing when relationships were not phenomenally well. Hard topic. But I'm just going to throw it out there. If anybody wants to then raise their hand and kind of say, yes, I felt that, you could do it. But I kind of want to put that out there. Not an easy topic. Therefore, once again, you have to have a nice list and you have to curate that list with the hiring team so they know what they're up against and what they can be expecting. That's it.
So Jonathan wanted to know if it's better to use references from larger mid-sized corporations that may only ask for like the standard information rather than small businesses who might give more. Jonathan, did I get that right, what you asked?
Yeah, like if you work for a small company, they're going to be honest and say, "Yeah, you work for me. This is good." Sometimes they'll be honest with them. Like a corporation, if HR, they'll always say, like these are he worked this date. This is his job. This is his title. Like you mentioned earlier. Like there's like standard. All they can confirm is that he worked these dates and that's the title. Versus like they'll give you a description of who you are, what you benefit, what you're good at, what you're bad. There's always it could be greater, than more information about me. But then the downside is that like, oh, they might say things that are not so good about me. That's my concern.
Okay. Can I take that for a second, Ruth, first?
Oh, yeah, I would like you
Okay.
to.
So okay, I think we have to break that up a little bit. Okay, I'll break it down because, if you're going to, first of all, when they're asking for references, okay, they want to know about you. But some companies, it's really about the company that is hiring you. Are they only going to checked that yes, you worked at the place that you said you did, or are they going to want to know more about you? Right? So I would say that most of it is going to be the latter, that they, at your position, they're going to want to know more about you, not just that you worked at a certain place at a certain date. And so in that respect, it doesn't really matter if it's a large or small organization because they're going to want to speak with with a person, and it's not going to be HR.
I'm just saying, in my experience that with like corporations will have like rules that they can only give certain information. Like some companies, as a matter of policy because of lost legal reasons. So they
Exactly.
sort of know when they call a company, like if you ever work for Price Waterhouse, they're only going to give my name, title, dates of employment. So they know nothing anymore if they call them up.
So then what I would say, thank you for clarifying, is that, yes, same thing with crap. We can't call them up, right? Because can't call HR, they will
You
not say
can't do
anything.
that, yeah.
But the thing is, Jonathan, is that if you are getting a job offer and you want this job, you want to provide a reference that is a person that's not in HR that will be able to speak and give you a reference. So let's say it was one of the big consulting firms that you worked at. You would select someone who perhaps isn't there anymore and wouldn't feel that obligation, right? And someone who hasn't worked there anymore because most people have moved on and you've moved on, and pick someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like a large and their rules, whatever. It's about the individual that you're choosing, whether they have the freedom to speak. And it goes also back to you want to be very,
They may
you
not.
want to be thoughtful about who you're selecting, that you've got a good working relationship with them.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would say the word is curate this.
Curate.
Because if it can work in your favor, and there is a policy even from HR all the way down, and you could say, as you know, they're going to just give you the facts. But if you want to hear something about the way I work, then you go around that situation and find somebody who you worked for prior to that. You can curate this a little bit, okay? Given what's working against you, which is nobody has all that much time to talk to 5 people and go, so you're going to make it easier for them to get the story that serves you best.
Okay. Have a next question, and it's from David. And Ruth, you may have answered a little bit about this, but perhaps we could reiterate. Is there anything specific the company is looking for when doing a reference check?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
They want to know the strengths. Well, you've done reference checks, so you go after me. They really want to know, will this person work out? Can they do the job? Do they want to do the job? And most importantly, will they fit? So they're going to, you like that? So I think, can they do the job is evaluated somehow, through some pre-testing that they do if it's IT. And let's say you've gone through 3 rounds. They want to make sure what you say you can do, you can do. But I think the most important part of a reference might be, will this person fit? So they may ask all kinds of style questions. They will ask questions off of the resume. And as I said, somehow or other, they're going to dig for, well, what could be a challenge this person, what should a company like us be looking for this position? And I think just can they do the job as they say they can? they want to, that you can, but do they fit? And there are all kinds of questions that a good hiring manager with a recruiting team would be looking for. That's, but already, Alyssa, because you've hired a lot of people.
I always just like think about what I always, yeah, put myself in the shoes of the person who's hiring me. What are they going to want to know? And through the interview process, you should be getting some hints what they focused on or what they've probed deeper when they're interviewing you. And, if they've asked a lot and probed more on one particular skill or an experience or something, then it could behoove you to give your references a heads up about that and just say, can you please speak about my expertise in Excel? Sorry, I mean, I don't know if that's, but I'm just using an example. Can what would be the key things that will be successful in this job? And that's, you just have to really just be so on top of it.
I had someone who said they served as a reference, and then I found out they were not giving me a good reference. So somehow at the last moment, and I only found out by speaking to someone who did not choose me. He can find out what your reference. Are there ways you can find out what references are saying? This is a toughie. And no idea. I always had a good relationship with the person. I thought, yeah. Soraya, are you there? Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
This was
Wow.
this was tough. This was a person I'd worked with. We worked overseas in Dubai. I thought we had a good working relationship. He was well known in the field. I asked him, would he serve as a reference? He said yes. I had given him on several positions, and then I ended up not giving them. One, I was lucky enough to have a good relationship with the recruiter, and she told me, she said, she said, and it's not what he's saying, it's how he's saying it.
Damning with faint praise, I call it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was hurtful, number one, because I thought we had a good relationship. Number two, it was not good because I needed another job. So
and you were being,
that was tough. I don't,
you were being gray ball, not black ball, gray ball. Yeah. I mean, and it also could be a cultural thing. Who knows? How an American would be wanting enthusiasm and, oh my God, the best thing from sliced bread. And it could be, if a person's from another culture, they're not. Yeah. Did you go over the position with the person? Did you go a little into, did you curate it a little bit? Did you say, you're probably going to hear from this company, and you did?
Yes, and this was a person, he was from South Africa, but he had lived and worked here in the US, but he and I had worked, we had worked for the same consulting company in the US, IBM, and then we went together to IBM in Dubai and worked together. And
okay, so cultural,
and culture was the same. We were both, Muslim.
You're answering my question. Yeah.
And so it was just shocking.
Yes.
And as I said, quite hurtful too, because we'd worked together so long. So,
well, can I tell you some of the crazy things some clients have done?
Sure.
Yeah. They've set up a friend who might have a business, or just they set that up almost like an undercover and just said, could you tell me something about, I mean, I don't recommend that necessarily, but if it's really hurting your job search a lot, I don't recommend it, but they did find out. And this person may not even be aware that he's damning by faint praise. Alyssa, so, I had a mentor who would say something like, look, we've worked together. I'm a fair person. You're a fair person. Are you feeling comfortable about serving as my reference? So I don't want to burden you. You might be. That's about as far as I go. But what she would say was, we like each other. You don't want to, or we didn't get along, but can I be very frank? with you, I'm not getting positions. And it's been, are you comfortable? And then, of course, you don't use that person ever again anyway. And
I
if it
didn't.
worked, if it made any sense to let them know, it might not. But you were smart to have a good recruiter. A lot of people will not, they will not divulge that.
Yeah.
Alyssa, you've been
Right. Yeah, so I would just add to that that it just brought to mind that what Ruth said, you don't know exactly the tone or how they're saying things. They might really like you, not even be aware of how they're saying things. So one watch out is how you interacted with that person. I'll give you an example. So I was a director of a very, very large business when I was at Kraft, and my VP I got along with really well, I thought. But when he would introduce me, he would say, Elisa manages the day to day. And it just was kind of this weird thing where it made him look higher, me lower, or something like this. I'm not sure what it was, but I got feedback from people because I managed the large team, whatever, of, you do more than the way it says the day to day, because he was just trying to be casual and da 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 da. Guys, I would never use that guy as much as I really like him and we worked
Yeah.
together. We delivered results and all. I would never use him for a reference. I don't want to be described as that. So again, it's like, again, think about when you're you're making your long list of references, then you're shortening it. Think about your interactions. How did that person interact with you? You're not going to get any of this perfect. Nothing is going to be perfect, but you can at least weed out or put them to the bottom of the list, right? So I have a question. We're going to move on to the next one. When providing references, should you explain the connection, like whether they were coworker, supervisor?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's easy.
There are
Yeah.
there are forms, and it's based, of course. If you want this person to be contacted, every single aspect, their email address, their anything and everything, their phone number, email address. They don't need to have LinkedIn, but if it's a good LinkedIn, you might want to have that name and every single part of, and make it look nice. I don't necessarily need to think of it this way, but I did some reading and they said make it like the way your resume has a headline, then just make it look beautiful. Okay, so basically all they want is the very, what is the relationship, how to get them, their name, and maybe a little something. The more full you can make it, the better, but not so much that it's overwhelming. Send it to them in a nice format. What else? I had a thought, but that left me. And yeah.
Your question is, should we be worried about using a reference, which is quite old, over 20 years, if they're more likely to give a personal, detailed, glowing review? Yeah, this one is older. So is your question about, do you not have any references in the past 20 years and you only have ones from 20 years and more?
I do, which are more current, like my last job, like within the past 5 years, but it's just, I had one other reference that was a little bit distant, and this person actually like volunteered. I can give you a reference. So I just feel like it would be more enthusiastic. So it would be two current references and just this one, which is, as I say, 20 years old.
I think that's totally fine. Because but because you said you have two that are more current. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So that's okay, because yes, you want to have a couple that are current, but your experience and everything in your trajectory is your career. And look at me. I always do this. Look at my gray hair. Like I've had experience, right? I've worked for many years, and they're talking about personality traits, your approach to work, your work ethic, things like that, evolve at times, hopefully get better, but also other aspects of that, your work ethic and things like that, stay true. So definitely, if you think that's someone who offered who's a strong reference, yes, or yes, and have the more current ones as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Is that person on the resume? Is that?
So that's the other thing with this new like condensed format, which they're promoting of only the past 10 years of positions. There is that like additional experience category where I could add it there, but like currently, no, she's not on my resume.
Well, you might want to. You might want to and disguise that it happened how many years ago?
So 20 years ago. Additional
experience. And you don't necessarily have to say that.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, when you put your list together, you could just state the name of the company because it is in the resume, but there's no date attached to it, and let them ask for it.
Okay, on my LinkedIn, there will be a date attached to it.
All right, so then so if it's on LinkedIn, then it is what it is.
Okay.
But you know, on LinkedIn, you could do it the same way. You could change it and you could say prior career experience. If you're afraid, if you're leery that 15 years, I help people with resumes and LinkedIn profile, prior experience. They don't have to know whether it's 11 years ago or 15 years ago or 20. That's up to you. If you feel real good about it, 15 is not that much. But if it's front and center and you're dealing with a very young person that will be hiring you, a 30s or a millennium, then figure that out. You know what I mean? The LinkedIn profile stays, but the resume could be a little bit, what's the word? Well, so I would say, yeah. So once again, curated, like say, this is such a stellar review, it should not be missed. But that person doesn't necessarily have to know when it happened. They'll ask, but it doesn't have to be volunteer.
Okay, so I have a slightly different approach to this, and it goes to every time we talk about ageism or anything in any of the webinars, I just have a different view on this, which is that as it pertains, you are who you are. You are the sum of your experiences. Is it true that you're competing against younger people? 100%, what Ruth is saying. Is it true that most people are recommending only for the last 15 years? 100%. However, be proud of it is number one. Number two is that when you get to the point of getting a reference, of them asking for your references because you're about to get the job, they are probably going to surmise approximately your age range. Okay? There's no reason to hide any of that because, so for your documents, like when Ruth is saying on your resume, additional experiences at the beginning stage, 100%, just include the company. You don't have to put the dates, but I just want people to be comfortable that when you're getting close to being hired, they're going to know how old you are. And what it's about, it's less about your age, but your experience, your professionalism, how you appear, how you look in terms of your professionalism, not your gray hair, okay? Yeah, and you bring out, and they're obviously looking for someone who does have experience because that's the role they need to fill. Somebody who they don't have to babysit all the time, who can hit the road running. And if you embrace that, right, it will come through. I just always have a different thing when we talk about the age and all that, because it's true, it's real, but what are you gonna do, guys?
Yes, sometimes they absolutely want somebody like you. Absolutely.
Yes.
But that's why you have to be very aware as you interview, you're interviewing them too and sizing it up. Is there another one? Do we have a little time for one more?
We have time for one more question. And then let me just say that after this, we finish in 5 minutes, and then I'm still on for half an hour. So I can take any other questions. Just let me check with Hannah. Lisa? Okay, Lisa, you have a comment. You didn't write what it was. You're going against my rules, but I'll let you go. Okay, Lisa.
Sorry. I didn't know. I didn't really want to write it. So, I just want to make a comment about first of all, thank you for having this. I haven't been on a seminar that discussed references. This is amazing.
Yeah,
It's
that's why we
so
chose
fun.
it. That's why we chose it.
I like
That's why we
jumping
did it.
over things I mull about, and that's wonderful. My one comment is when you said about here's the case for not providing the references up front. Now, maybe I had gone to a seminar years ago. They said it's sneaky. Don't provide the references, and people can argue with me, whatever. Some companies, now, I don't know if you're going to like this, if you provide those references up front, okay,
They will.
they may call those people
That's right.
for the job.
Them. That's right.
I don't know
You
if
must
that's
have been
true,
listening
so
to
that scared me.
Yeah. You must have been listening to the 5 o'clock club because
Oh,
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that was my old organization.
Oh, okay.
You
Yeah.
know, no,
I don't know if that's true or not, but
it's
other
not
people might
very
be in the wrong.
true. At this point, nobody wants to waste. It's pretty
Okay.
easy.
Okay.
There's LinkedIn. People pay for that. They can recruit pretty quickly.
Okay.
But you just don't want to give it out. It just wastes everybody's time. And I think we gave you some verbiage around, and Alyssa had like perfect, like,
I just want
she also came with, I'm a great candidate. And here's another thing. She was in the introductory stage. So she had enough confidence. She had enough confidence to say, no, I'm going to need a little bit more, from the nature of the job and our interaction to really to give you something very valid that you could use.
Don't ask.
I'm going to wrap up
Okay.
in respect for the time and for everyone here. And then I am going to be staying on for half an hour to ask and talk to more people. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And especially to thank Ruth for sharing this topic about everything to know about references, which we had seen. Ruth came to me to suggest this topic. And I said, we haven't seen anybody doing this before. And I thought it was just a fabulous idea. Again, want to thank our funders of the JBS JobSeekers program, Project M, and Jewish Federation of Greater MetroWest for making this possible to make it available for no charge to everyone who joins us. And the next session is going to be on July 11th. And it's called ACE, the most common interview questions. And we're going to have a lot of working samples for you guys of the most common with a lot of different types of templates and ways to like work sessions for you to get through them. So thank you so much, Ruth, for joining us. You were absolutely terrific.